You're listening to Customer Growth Sessions, presented by Intergrowth, where we talk through strategies to help up-and-coming e-commerce businesses bring in more customers. I'm your host, Pat Ahern. Let's jump in. Okay, listeners, welcome back to the latest episode of Customer Growth Sessions. Today, I'm thrilled to have on Alex Holmes, the Chief Growth Officer over at Influx. Alex, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you.
Good to be here, Pat. Thanks for inviting me, and excited to talk about CX, e-commerce, marketing, and everything in between.
Absolutely. So let's start out with hearing a little about Influx. What is it that you guys do over at Influx?
Yeah, so we're a trusted service partner for brands. We've been at it for about 11 years. In short, we help companies scale CX and build flexible CX systems that grow with them when they're growing and doesn't grow with them when they're not growing.
One of the reasons I'm so excited to have you on, you've been there for probably 7-8 years at this point. And it's so cool. If you look on LinkedIn, you see that you've held like half the roles at the company as you've grown in your role. You were the interim CEO. You're really leading growth efforts now. So a lot of great insights I'm excited to jump into, like regarding customer experience there.
Yeah, totally. I've seen a lot, been through a lot. It's been a lot of fun. Before this stop, I was at one company for about 3.5 years. And before that, I jumped around a lot. So it's kind of fun to stick with one thing. And then you really see how different decisions play out over time as well. So it's been a really good learning experience.
So I want to get right into the meat of things because there are a lot of good questions that I want to get into today. In your opinion, do most e-commerce businesses really get wrong when it comes to customer support?
Yeah, the number one thing, all e-commerce businesses are different, channels are different, products different, customers different, geos are different. But one thing that most people get wrong is thinking about it too late and thinking about it as an agent problem and stop this flood of tickets problem. And really, they should be thinking about what's the foundation of this CX team? How do I make this work over time? What happens in 3 months? What happens in 6 months? And so something I talk to a lot of clients about and potential clients about is, well, what's the operational foundation of this entire CX team and how is that going to work over time? Because really agents is something that comes second after that.
So can we dive a little bit into that foundational system in CX?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe breaking it down, I would imagine there's a couple different components there. Let's start out with the process development that goes into play there. Say I'm running an e-com business, maybe we have 5 customer service agents, we're falling behind, we really just need a system overhaul. What maybe processes should I start out really making sure that I have mapped out today? And if I don't have them mapped out right now, should I pause the podcast and really make sure that I build out in the next week or two?
Yeah, totally. The best starting point, this goes for CX, but with a lot of teams, is what really matters. So what are the metrics that matter and why does that matter? And how does that connect back to business results and growth and profitability and building a long-term sustainable business? So figure that out. And then how do we track that? How do we create visibility into that? And then how does the role of the agent contribute to that outcome we're trying to achieve? And then once you figure that out, then when you talk about, all right, let's bring in 5 more agents with a company like ours, you need to think about, well, what does the first week look like? What does the first month look like? What does the first 3 months look like? Okay, we want an agent to be answering 10 tickets an hour. Okay, great. What are the types of tickets they're going to be answering? Do you have examples of how you want them to respond? What's the brand voice? Where's the training playbook for the 5 agents? So there's this whole series of foundational work you can do, which all starts with the outcome. What are you actually trying to accomplish? Sometimes companies don't really need an exceptional customer experience. They just need to clear the inbox every 2 to 3 days. Some companies, it's every 10 days. Customer experience doesn't even really matter for whatever reason. Customers are locked in and they've made this business decision that it doesn't matter as much. Most of the brands we work with do care about customer experience. That's why they work with us. It all comes back to the actual outcomes you're trying to achieve as a company.
So within that, in your opinion, what brands or maybe what signs in a business do you see that lead you to say, hey, maybe customer experience shouldn't be your first priority. Maybe don't invest resources into that today.
Yeah, it's companies where you read about them and they're really successful. And then you Google them and you Google reviews and the reviews are really bad. So they've somehow figured out that reviews don't matter that much. And we still got a great business here for whatever reason. The companies we work with, we can look at their 5-star ratings and we can say, these companies are actually leaders in their entire market. They're actually disrupting their market by investing in great CX and brand and talking to their customers and engaging them and wowing them. I'd say the starting point is, what do the reviews look like? And if a company wants to bump up their reviews, then I think it's time to look at, well, what's the foundations of the CX org? Who are we working with? Who's helping with that?
When we were first talking and kind of mapping out what would be some good angles to get into within this podcast, you had brought up some really interesting insights that I want to get you to speak to a little bit more in depth. One of the things was on the reporting side of things. You had brought up a really excellent point that when it comes to tracking performance for customer service, there can be a lot of, maybe I would describe it as qualitative data points that can actually be really misleading and can actually really interfere with your customer experience goals. Could you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah. So often people jump to individual success metrics that are then not always connected to the broader metric you're trying to achieve, which is usually about revenue growth, reducing OpEx, making things more sustainable. So an example of that is saying, okay, we want every agent to respond to 10 tickets an hour, saying that's the only thing that matters. Well, if that's the only thing that matters, guess what's going to happen? The experience is going to get worse. Customer satisfaction is going to get worse. So then you could do the thing that a lot of managers do, which is introduce a pairing metric. So you say, okay, we care about 10 tickets responded to per hour, and we care about CSAT, which actually a lot of our clients do. So that makes a lot of sense. For whatever reason, those two metrics combined often work really well for a lot of upstart brands. Well, there are actually situations where the individual agents can be doing this great job. They can be super efficient. Their CSAT's pretty good, but then the overall CSAT is getting worse, or the value per customer is getting worse. So why is that happening? It turns out that you've got agents who are just cherry picking tickets and they're finding the easy ones. People are smart, that everyone's just self-interested. That's just the way things work. In that case, you'd add a third pairing metric, or you have to think about who does what, and you have to think about triage in the inbox and allow different agents to work on different tickets and make sure you're delegating that work in a way where you're lifting the overall customer experience. And all that's done by management and team leaders. So that management level is so important.
Now, on the management side of things, let's say you're working with a business, they're looking to hire that customer experience manager. What guidance would you offer to them in terms of either hard or soft skills to really look for in that manager, let's say during the interview phase?
Yeah, absolutely. So a manager's doing a couple different jobs. In customer experience, the most common thing is they need to make sure that the agents are meeting their performance levels, and then those performance levels connect back to what a company wants in the first place. So first and foremost, do they care about people? Are they developing people? Are they training people? Do they have an eye for talent? And then the next piece is, do they understand what makes a great customer experience? So are they expert contributors in the first place? And then they need to connect all that work back to what a company wants in the first place. So that's about client relationships with people on the other side of the fence and working collaboratively and finding ways to make that work. So if you can find someone that can do all that stuff, so exceptional people management, exceptional customer experience, exceptional relationship management and alignment with external teams, you've got a potential superstar manager right there.
So could you maybe give us the inside scoop on, let's say, one or two questions that you really like to ask when you're hiring for CX roles at Influx? What are some of the questions that are your go-to?
Yeah, absolutely. So the number one thing for something like this is really asking about specific examples from a specific place on how you improve the customer experience for someone, how you made a hiring decision, how you made a change in delegation around some set of tasks. And if someone can dive into the detail and tell you about the different scenarios they were thinking about, the information they gathered, and then ultimately how they worked collaboratively with different people, that's usually a strong indicator. It's a hard thing to fake. And I've always got follow-up questions as well to dig in further. So that's a good place to start.
It's the Elon Musk style of asking, tell me about the hardest challenge you've solved, and just keep on asking how until people finally stumble up. I love it.
Yeah, cool. I don't ask it quite like that, but that's pretty good. Maybe I should do that.
Are there different questions that you'll ask? Let's say if you're hiring for a support rep versus maybe like a CX manager.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's, tell me about your experience working with Gorgeous. Gorgeous is a big e-com help desk. Tell me about the new Agent AI. Have you rolled that out recently? Why? Why not? Will that work? What's your prediction into the future? Tell me about designing change and who did that work. You can drill in really quickly to, has someone worked on difficult CX problems before, and have they had to think from scratch, from first principles, if you want to call it that, to design the best solution for a client or for your internal business? That's the type of person we're looking for. And we We don't even recruit from traditional call centers a lot of the time because we found that people working in the traditional BPOs don't have that first principles thinking. We want to find people that are ready to take on new challenges while having the people skills and the customer experience and relationship skills, and can design solutions for our clients in a way that actually matches the experience the clients have already designed themselves for their customers, which is often quite unique and disruptive and interesting and has its own tech stack and all that. So you need to find people that can latch into that really quickly and then make it better at all levels. That feeds a lot of those recruiting questions.
I was thinking a little more about the pairing metrics. This is jumping around a little bit, but the pairing metrics that you had mentioned in terms of reporting, you had brought up just a really good point that if you're, let's say, strictly looking at like response volume that a CX rep can put through in an hour, there's incentives to just go for the easy customer service questions and leave those really challenging questions, which maybe the expert CX rep on your team, the best person that you hire, is the one that's sitting down, is taking time to leave that nuanced response and really give you that 5-star customer service rating. Could you share some of the maybe example pairing metrics that you find work really well with that to make sure that 5-star CX rep gets credit for that hard response, but also maybe not that you're detracting from the other reps that are just going for the easy questions, but that you're at least more cognizant that, hey, maybe this person is strictly going with the really easy stuff that we have?
Yeah, that's usually accomplished more at the triage level than the individual agent level, because really high quality, if a customer writes in with this 5-part, really detailed, tricky question with hints of anger, that's a 30 to 60 minute job. Breaking that down, there's actually AI tools that can help with that now. But even with those, that could be a 30-minute job, maybe 20-minute job. If you really know what you're doing, you understand the product really well, you understand this type of customer really well. So with triage, you just put those types of tickets, those types of messages into the kind of trickier bucket or the longer, more nuanced bucket. And then you have agents focused on those. Maybe you have a team leader focused on those. And then the rest of the agents, you could have tier 1 agents, tier 2 agents, something like that. So through the triage system, you kind of give everyone an equal playing field. And then you can also compare how different agents are performing either within Influx or with other third parties or with the in-house team as well. And it just gives you this really equal playing field, apples to apples across all the agents, all the service providers, and see what's working. And whatever's working, do more of that.
And you mentioned using a couple AI tools to help you out with that. Obviously, AI is all the rage now. Let's start out with using AI for maybe that like project facilitation side of things. What tools do you recommend to CX teams?
Yeah, so we're tech agnostic. So we use what our clients use. The most prominent tech that we've seen is typically provided by the help desk or chat solution because it's already built into the solution. So it's typically the easiest thing to implement because it's already implemented. We've actually rolled out our own Copilot tool as well. One of our co-founders is an engineer. So we've had some success with that. It's kind of a version of ChatGPT, but then we layer in the help desk information of the client's training materials. And that allows an agent to break down customer questions in certain ways and then also create a V1 response for certain types of questions. Everything we do is human powered though. So there always needs to be the nuance and the human layer that's added to every message. But yeah, just to answer your question, I think the stuff that's out of the box for help desk, especially in the 1 to 4 team space, which is where we spend a lot of our time playing, that's usually the best solution, followed by kind of more open source Copilot solutions or something that's a little more nuanced, which is what we help clients set up.
Brilliant that you guys built out your own solution to go along with that. So let's speak to maybe the listeners that are a little skeptical on the value of customer service. You know, you mentioned some businesses can get by with terrible customer service ratings. I think of a former broadband or internet provider that I had, like when I was living over in the US, whose name starts with X, is the first one that comes to mind.
Yep, that's the exact one. Yeah, certain telecom. Actually, a lot of telecom, at least I'm living in Australia, but a lot of the telecom companies here have actually gotten pretty good. I remember 15 years ago, some bad experiences through contract lock-ins and seem not to matter from a business perspective. But yeah, and I've had some bad situations with crypto companies and domain registrars, which for whatever reason have just decided we're not going to respond for 3 weeks. And that's an okay business practice. But for most other businesses, it makes sense to at least do some basic level of investment.
So within that, let's maybe talk about the ROI component that goes into customer service. Assuming you're a business maybe that isn't able to get by having 1 and 2 star reviews across the board, being hated by most of your customers, why should businesses be investing in that 5-star CX element?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think people do their homework now. I mean, you just pop into Google and increasingly the AI tools, you're going to say, what's the best solution for bedding, for cookware, for my next kitchen renovation, whatever it is. And increasingly technology is going to feed you information that says this is the best solution. Well, where do they get that information? It's from customers posting online and saying, this is awesome, or this isn't, or I've had this issue, or their customer service sucks, or their customer service is amazing. They responded in 2 hours and actually fixed my problem for me. So if you're not putting that positive sentiment on the internet, I think you're just going to be left behind by all the new technology solutions coming out now.
Last thing that comes to mind that I want to pick your brain on, maybe some resources that would be good to check out for additional information. What I like to refer as like the overworked e-com founder, the person who's still running every leg of the business. They have their hands in every part of the equation and they're working a lot of hours to keep the business afloat. What is maybe one action step you would recommend for that founder? Say they're running the business, they have a dozen contractors. What's one thing that they could do in the next, call it 2-3 weeks on the CX front to maybe take a couple hours of work off their plate and really start just running a healthier business?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with a ton of overworked founders in founder mode, you might say. So the number one thing it depends how overworked you are, but I think there's 2 ways to solve the time problem as a founder. Let me answer that more broadly, and then I'll address ecom specifically after that. One way is to bring in one really good manager. So you've got this big bucket of work and you want to find someone and develop them, and you want to bring a really strong manager into the fold. That assumes you can pay for that, but most people can if they're getting hit by that much work. The other option is to level up someone that is already working for you. So if you've got 12 contractors, just find one and then just find a more experienced or more task relevant, competent version of that person. And either of those tactics should usually help. Now let's talk about an overworked e-commerce founder specific to CX and operations. So option 1 is bring in a really good manager. That would probably just be in-house. Ideally, they sit next to you if you're in a co-working space somewhere, but could potentially be remote as well. This is an employee that you're actually investing in and planning to work with you for the next 2 to 4 years. 2 other moves, 2 things we do. So we actually have a support as a service product, which is a fully managed service, which includes the management layer and the training. So you can just offload that whole thing. It's a foundation. It's pretty cheap. It's $1,000 a month. And you're building the foundations of your service team. And it forces you to think about what are the business processes that serves as inputs into this service team. So that's option 1. And then option 2 is we actually just launched this new fractional brand called fractionaltalent.com. And you can bring in those fractional operators month to month with a manager sitting there helping you with it. And you can outsource, offshore the different pieces of your operations that need help. And what we found with launching that brand, a really popular use case is probably more general ops and not just customer service, because you've got these overworked founders that don't have enough work yet to say, hey, I need this customer service specialist. What I need is a bit of customer service, a bit of operational sales, a bit of operations. And it's like, great. What you need is one really good operator working 4 hours a day. So that's an option for that with us or with whoever.
Last thing I'd love to pick your brain on for listeners that maybe want more hands-on resources about either how to level up existing reps, how to hire reps or managers for the future. Yeah, what resources, what websites would you recommend that they go check out? And no worries if you want to plug Influx, that's fair game as well. But what resources should they really check out? We'll share those in the show notes.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of material on the Influx blog. We've done a few roundup pieces. I think all the help desks actually have pretty good content. So you've got Help Scout, you got Zendesk, you got Gorgeous, Intercom. They're all fairly thorough. Usually the best advice I've seen on the internet is, because customer service is kind of this broad topic. So if you say, hey, how do I launch a great customer service team? All the content's going to be pretty vague and not that helpful as well. You're in content world, so you totally get it. The best way to search out content probably is to think about what's the specific problem I have? Who's the type of company I am? Who am I selling to? And let me find people that have done that before And then you could actually just direct message them on LinkedIn, or you could ask specific questions and maybe these types of people pop up. There's a good community, support driven. It's a lot of kind of director of client success type roles. So they're often dealing with like AI and 20 headcount and that kind of thing. So not as relevant for founders, but that's another resource. So I'd say Influx blog, help desk blogs, Reddit. Some of the AI tools are okay. Support driven community. That's where I've seen the best advice.
To clarify, support driven, is that a Slack community, Reddit, or is it on another
Slack
channel?
community? Yeah.
Okay.
I've been in it for years. So I'm actually not, there might be some criteria for it now, but I was one of the first people in there. I'm like, oh, this is incredible. Like everyone talking about customer service. That's cool.
Oh, man. Well, Alex, this has been awesome. Before we let you go, what's the best way for listeners to get in touch with you and the Influx team if they want to learn more about working with you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably just LinkedIn, and LinkedIn probably way too much. So yeah, I'm Alex Holmes on LinkedIn. You can find the Influx LinkedIn account. We post pretty regularly there. And yeah, I'm around. Happy to chat with anyone. I've been basically building teams both directly and indirectly for about 8.5 years. So I'm happy just to share at a high level how different founders have done it, because everyone's kind of got a slightly unique way of doing it. So I could just share a few anecdotes of what's worked and not worked for different companies.
Well, Alex Holmes, Chief Growth Officer over at Influx. Alex, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thanks for tuning in to Customer Growth Sessions. If you found it helpful, subscribe and give us a review. It helps us to grow the show. Looking for more SEO guidance on how to grow your business? Contact us at intergrowth.com/estimator or email me directly. You can reach me at pat@intergrowth.com. That's all for today. We'll see you again soon.